morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Captain Greg McCarthy, and I will be the Master of Ceremonies for this event. If you take a look at your program, you'll see the invocation and benediction was to be delivered by Doug Hoffman. He is a retired sergeant from our department. Doug was called away at the last second yesterday. Pastor John Lutka of the Community Baptist Church here in Groton was gracious enough to come through for us and be with us for the invocation and benediction. So thank you, Pastor. At this time, please rise for the presentation and posting of colors and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Uniformed officers cover and hand salute when directed. Color Guard, present the colors. Hand salute. Ready, two. At this point, we will be doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Hand salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ready, two. Post the colors. I'd like to thank our color guard of Sergeant Eben Van Voorhees, Sergeant Eric Cordaweg, Canine Officer Sean Lissy, and Task Force Officer Kyle Lopriori. At this time, Pastor John Lutka will give the invocation. Pastor Lutka.
Shall we pray? Father, as we are standing here at this moment, you are witness to what is going on in this room, for you see everything. And I am grateful for the privilege that we can come today and honor those who have served well, those both citizens and those who serve in our department in different aspects of this, who give part of their life to serve their community. It is something that you ordained many, many, many years ago. We thank you for the privilege of now being here present to see those who will be awarded for commendations or for achievements that they have accomplished. And we are thankful to be here as witnesses and as those who would cheer them on. We ask now your blessings on this time, and it is in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Lutka. Color Guard, seats. Everyone else, please have a seat and uncover for uniformed personnel. At this time, I would like to I'd like to recognize some distinguished guests with whom I share the dais. I'd ask that when you called, you rise and be recognized. Town Councilor Bruce Jones. Thank you, Bruce. I believe Town Councilman Eddie Jacome is here. Eddie, are you right in front of me? Sorry. My glasses only go so far. We have Dana Parfit, I believe, is here from the Citizens and Police Committee. Dana, thank you very much. We have Deputy Chief Paul Gately behind me. Thank you, sir. We also have other distinguished guests with us today. I'd ask that when you are called, you rise and be recognized. Retired Police Chief David Van Ness. Thank you, Chief. Good to see you again. Retired members of the Groton Town Police Department are also here with us. We have Joe Nesdell, Dennis Campagna. We got Jim Gauthier. I thought I saw Mike Clancy somewhere. Right in front. There you are, Mike. Good to see you. At this time, I welcome Chief L.J. Fusaro Jr. to the podium for his opening remarks. Chief Fusaro.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us this morning. I only have a few comments right now, and then I'll take advantage of some time after this. But first, I'd want to thank you for attending and taking time out of your busy day to share this with us. But I'd now like to invite our town manager, John Burt, to come up and make a few comments and welcome everybody to the ceremony. Mr. Burt.
Hello, I'm pleased to be here this morning. Welcome to the friends and family of those being honored. I'm sure each of you are deeply proud of your friends and loved ones, as I am proud of all of you. For those that don't know, this week is Public Service Recognition Week, which is a time to thank dedicated public servants, and I can't think of anyone more dedicated or more worthy than all those in law enforcement. Congratulations to those being honored. The impact you've had in our community is incalculable. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here in person today to express my gratitude. You have my deepest appreciation, respect, and eternal gratitude for all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Manager Burt. I have to say, and this isn't part of my notes, John Burt has been extremely supportive of this department. He's a person that we can turn to with questions. He's been certainly someone that's advocated for us and that's supportive of all the officers and dispatchers and civilian members of our department. So thank you for that continued and unwavering support. We truly appreciate it. And I appreciate the friendship and the mentorship as well. Just going to make a few remarks. I want to acknowledge that we do have a lot of distinguished folks here in the room. Our town council members. I don't know if we have any RTM members. I haven't seen any, but thank you for being here, and maybe a couple of department heads. But on behalf of the entire department, I want to thank our awards committee, chaired by Lieutenant David Miner. Unfortunately, Lieutenant Miner isn't here today, or maybe fortunately for him, as he's currently in Quantico, Virginia, attending the FBI National Academy. A special thanks to the rest of the members of the awards committee, and I'd ask them to stand and be recognized. Sergeant Joel Lenda, Investigator Eric Banwell, Master Patrol Officer Lori Socia, Detective Matt Hammerstrom, and Dispatcher Leland Rummel. Thank you all for your diligent work on this. Some other folks I just want to acknowledge that helped put today together would be Lieutenant Chris Holt, my assistant Jeannie Vislowski, who's capably assisting with handing out these awards in a few minutes, and Officer Lori Socia. They put in a lot of time and energy making today possible. And quite frankly, this is long overdue. We haven't done one of these in a number of years, and a lot of it's due to what we've all been going through collectively as a society with the pandemic in the last few years. And I want to say this right from the start, that these are well-deserved awards. They're awards that should have been handed out some time ago in many cases, but we just have not had the opportunity. But I think it also speaks to the fact that these officers and dispatchers were working throughout the pandemic, day in and day out. They didn't take time off. They couldn't work remotely. They did everything they needed to do to get their job done. Chief Clapsaddle, I'm sorry we didn't acknowledge you. I see you sitting there. Thank you for being here as well, the Sub-Base Fire Department Fire Chief. But how fitting that we're doing this ceremony today in this month of May, a month that will soon be celebrating Police Memorial Week and honoring the lives and legacies of officers who have made the supreme sacrifice. This year it's a little bit more solemn here in Connecticut. As we all know, 2 officers were killed in October up in Bristol responding to a call. And certainly this should mean something to all of us, not just for the officers, but for our extended family. Every day someone puts a badge on, wears a gun to work, there's risk. It's inherent in this profession, and those are 2 officers that died far too young, but we do everything as leaders in police work to make sure that doesn't happen, and I commit to you that I'll continue doing that as long as I'm the chief of this department, to make sure our officers go to work well prepared, well led, and safe, so that they perform their duties the way we expect them to. It's also important for me to recognize the many family and friends of today's recipients. You share in the success of the personnel you are here to support, and without you providing that constant support and assistance at home, they could not do this job. You are as much a part of this department as they are, And I'd like to also extend a warm welcome to our brother and sister law enforcement and public safety officials from other agencies, as well as current and former members of the military. Finally, I'm so proud and happy to have some of our retired members here today. That means a lot. As we spoke about in this room a short time ago with the current members of the department, our lifespan in this agency is finite. Eventually, we will move on to other things. We'll hopefully take advantages of well-earned retirements and be welcomed back with open arms, as we're trying to do for our former members. So thank you all for being here today. But most of all, today is all about recognizing the men and women of this department, both our sworn and civilian members. Today's recipients have distinguished themselves in so many ways, and we'll acknowledge their many accomplishments. We honor some much-deserved recipients of awards that reflect achievement, meritorious action, life-saving efforts, and bravery. These deeds are the marks of professionals who perform their duties in a way that is a credit to the profession we serve, the community we serve in, and the people we serve with. Many of these awards are long overdue, but we're happy to present them today. Too often, law enforcement officers enter into people's lives when they may not want it. An officer stops someone for a traffic violation, or arrives at their home to investigate a burglary, or comes to their aid in a motor vehicle crash or other traumatic event. Or even when a dispatcher answers a 911 call, only to walk someone through CPR in the hopes of resuscitating another person. We often meet people during the most difficult times that life has to offer. But those interactions are the ones that sometimes are the most impactful, are those known to only a few. When an officer or a dispatcher is there for someone desperately in need. Those small things like lending an ear to someone who is lost or lonely, or just being present to make someone feel safe. Those small acts, which are not celebrated at events like this today, leave the best and most lasting impressions. That happens all of the time with these officers and dispatchers. They are ambassadors to this community, and we're fortunate to honor so many of them today for the actions which we are recognizing and which are noticed on a daily basis. But I want all of these officers and dispatchers to know that even those unheralded actions that we aren't celebrating today are appreciated the most. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Don't worry about when you are not recognized, but strive to be worthy of recognition." I can say that our personnel here are always worthy of recognition, but many times their greatest work is that which I just told you is unheralded. Simple tasks that don't get rewarded with a medal or a certificate. The only reward is the gratification in knowing that you made someone's life a little bit better. And today, with policing the way it is, it's never been easy, but today is a little bit different, a little bit more of a challenge. We have been up to those challenges in recent years. The challenges these officers and dispatchers face and the scrutiny that our folks in public safety has been under in the last few years has led to some changes in the way we do our work. But it doesn't matter to this department because the legacy of honor, integrity, and duty has not changed. This department and these personnel continue to set the standard for others to emulate. And as you will hear in these citations, they're examples of great work. If I had told you at the beginning of my career that we would train officers and provide them with medication in the field, or that an officer would have a video camera affixed to their chest at every call, I'd have to say this is impossible. But that's where we are in today's policing. Our officers now are issued Narcan and they use it regularly. They wear body cameras that consistently demonstrate the outstanding actions we herald today. And of equal importance is the commitment to professionalism and the desire for self-improvement continuously on behalf of our personnel. And we're going to acknowledge some of those achievements for officers who have recently received their bachelor's or master's degrees. And by the way, we even have a few people in doctoral programs in this department. I think that just shows the level of commitment that the community has to this department and recognizing that, but also the fact that our officers and civilian personnel make a commitment back in continuing their professional development and making them better people and better public safety officials. Finally, I want to tell our award recipients just how proud I am of you and how blessed I am to be the steward of this department. I'm fortunate to serve as your chief and to serve alongside such an outstanding group of women and men. Thank you for your service. Congratulations to all of the award recipients. Congratulations to all of the members of this department who, again, don't often get the recognition they deserve. But as always, stay safe. And with that, we'll begin handing out the awards. Captain McCarthy.
So just as an aside, I was sworn in as a Groton Town police officer around this day, 16 years ago with Lieutenant McAndrew in this very room. I didn't need glasses back then at all, but here we are. Telecommunicator Michael Gilman, front and center. Telecommunicator Michael Gilman is being presented a letter of commendation as follows. On 4/2/2019, between the hours of approximately 3:30 a.m. to 5:50 a.m., telecommunicator Michael Gilman was required to manage multiple fire and emergency medical service emergencies following a significant construction accident on I-95, which resulted in a major electrical surge and loss of power to a sizable area of Groton. In the course of his involvement during the 2 hours noted, telecommunicator Gilman dispatched and managed 15 emergencies, 9 of which were fire-related, which included the initial incident, fire alarms, and smoke in the building calls. There were 6 EMS calls involving cardiac emergencies, falls, difficulty breathing, and stroke. Telecommunicator Gilman coordinated the response of 14 agencies with a total of 23 apparatus responding to these 15 events. Telecommunicator Gilman was also responsible for making telephone notifications to utility companies, Everbridge paging for fire departments, and other activities as required. And this is, I believe, Lee Rummel's comment, all with little assistance from his dispatch partner, who was extremely busy himself coordinating various police activities. Congratulations, telecommunicator Gilman. That was it. Lieutenant Stephen McAndrew, Officer Michael McCarthy, Sergeant Brenna Bolduck, Officer Jeffrey Brearley, Officer Devin Bedard, Officer Andrew Collins, Canine Officer Ryan Brower, telecommunicator Michael Gilman, telecommunicator Leland Rummel, and telecommunicator Nathan Canas, front and center. These personnel will be receiving a letter of commendation as follows. On November 14, 2019, Groton Police received several complaints almost simultaneously from Fitch High School students and their parents regarding threats made via social media. The complainants provided information that several students may become engaged in an assault at the high school, which could involve the use of knives and possibly a gun. The volume of calls received and also shared throughout social media by complainants and those concerned for their children's well-being caused overwhelming panic within the Fitch High School community and placed an immediate strain on police resources, as other unrelated calls for service were also being dispatched. Recognizing the potential for problematic issues, officers and dispatchers were able to bring a peaceful and quick resolution to the situation while restoring order throughout the community. The actions of those involved provided a sense of calm to the alarmed while allowing the sensible decision-making by those in appointed positions of authority. It should be noted that police officers deployed their skills and training in a diligent and professional manner to overcome some of the immediate resistance from several of the youths involved. Officers also deployed their highly skilled abilities at deciphering social media postings and information which can at times become extremely difficult to navigate while determining places of origin. Furthermore, the professionalism displayed by our Groton Town emergency dispatchers is to be commended, as they were engaged with the community throughout the night. While complaints seemed to pour into dispatch throughout the night, dispatchers were still able to research and disseminate accurate information to supervisors and officers in the field in a timely manner. The supervision provided to the officers during this incident was masterful, as then Sergeant Steve McAndrew ensured orders were carried out in an expeditious manner. Communication was paramount, as he continuously followed up with officers for updates and kept all officers involved in strict compliance with juvenile rights and applicable laws pertaining to such. If it were not for the intrepid focus and swift actions of our officers and dispatchers, this incident may have turned tragic, becoming front-page headlines while adding Groton to an ever-growing list of horrific incidents involving our nation's school systems. Thank you, officers and telecommunicators. Lieutenant Anthony LaFleur, Sergeant Eric Cordaweg, Officer Michael McCarthy, Officer Chad Potter, Officer Devin Bedard, Officer Sean Parody, and Officer Mitchell Chapman, front and center. These officers will be receiving a letter of commendation as follows. On December 28, 2019, at approximately 1:35 a.m., Officer Mitchell Chapman was following a vehicle eastbound on Gold Star Highway, Groton, near Antonino Drive. Officer Chapman observed the vehicle swerving in and out of its lane of traffic. Officer Chapman ran the vehicle's registration through Collect NCIC and believed the registration was expired. Officer Chapman attempted to conduct a motor vehicle stop of the vehicle, but the operator of the vehicle continued traveling eastbound. Officer Chapman radioed Groton Emergency Dispatch that the vehicle was pulling away from him. Officer Chapman estimated the speed of the vehicle to be approximately 78 miles an hour. Officer Chapman observed the vehicle pass a pickup truck on the right side of the highway in the breakdown lane. The vehicle then attempted to make a left turn onto Gunjiwamp Road northbound. However, the vehicle struck a section of curbing and went up over an embankment at the corner of Gold Star Highway and Gunjiwamp Road. The vehicle was launched approximately 10 feet in the air and struck a light pole in the parking lot of Paul's Service Center at 820 Gold Star Highway and took down the light pole before ultimately stopping when it collided with a Honda Odyssey parked in the lot. Officer Chapman advised Groton Emergency Dispatch the vehicle crashed and the vehicle's operator had exited the vehicle and fled on foot. At approximately 1:40 a.m., dispatch broadcast to area officers the vehicle had been reported stolen out of Vernon, Connecticut. Sergeant LaFleur, now Lieutenant LaFleur, was in the downtown Mystic area at the time of this incident and immediately radioed dispatch and advised them of its location. He then had Officer Michael McCarthy direct the responding units to the perimeter. Officer Devin Bedard, Officer Chad Potter, and Officer Sean Parody were the perimeter units, while Officer Eric Cordaweg, now Sergeant Cordaweg, and his canine partner Saber started a track of the suspect from the location of the crashed vehicle. Officer Chapman was the backup officer for the canine track. Upon Sergeant LaFleur's arrival on scene, he took over command and requested an additional canine unit from dispatch as the team of Sergeant Cordaweg and Canine Saber had been tracking for a while. Officer Cordaweg and Saber tracked to the rear of 1075 Gunjiwamp Road. He then advised dispatch he heard a snapping sound in the wooded area behind that location. Officer Cordaweg gave verbal commands for the suspect to come out or they would be bitten by Saber. Officer Cordaweg gave a final command saying, "If you do not come out now, you will get bit by the dog." On the body-worn camera footage, you can hear the suspect clearly say, "I am coming out." The suspect was then taken into custody without incident. All officers and dispatchers involved in this high-stress incident were calm and professional in their radio transmissions throughout the incident, and they all worked well as a team to ensure this incident was ended with the best resolution possible. Congratulations, officers. At this time, I turn over the MC duties to Deputy Chief Gately.
Captain Greg McCarthy, Lieutenant Dave Miner is, as previously stated, away at this time. Detective Sergeant Heather Beauchamp, Sergeant Brenna Bolduc, Investigator Derek Robertson, Detective Richard Savino, Master Patrol Officer James O'Connor, Sergeant Joel Lender, Officer Sean O'Brien, Officer Jeff Brearley, Officer Devin Bedard, Officer Eric Laporte, Officer Andrew Collins, Officer Mitchell Chapman, Telecommunicator Amy Lipkin, Telecommunicator Nathan Kanaz, Telecommunicator Michael White, front and center. These personnel will be receiving a letter of commendation as follows. On August 17th, 2020, at approximately 10:38 p.m., the Groton Emergency Communications Center received multiple calls reporting a plane crash on Ring Drive at Donna Drive in the town of Groton. Initial reports indicated that a plane had crashed into a residence and caused an explosion. Upon the arrival of officers, they observed a small plane had crashed into 255 Ring Drive at the corner of Donna Drive. Fire department personnel and ambulances were on scene quickly, and the one resident of the affected home was safely evacuated. The occupants of the plane were able to extricate themselves from the wreckage and were standing on the lawn across from the damaged home when officers arrived. There was no fire, no explosion, and no wires down as a result of the crash. However, area homes were evacuated as a precautionary measure while fire crews and emergency medical service personnel attended to the scene. The occupants of the plane were subsequently transported to L&M Hospital for treatment of non-life-threatening injuries, and the homeowner declined medical attention. Officers on scene did an exceptional job in securing the scene and evacuating homes surrounding the crash scene. Personnel also remained to investigate and secure the scene until the hazardous condition was secured. All involved department personnel acted swiftly, professionally, and calmly. Appropriate resources were directed to this emergency by dispatch personnel, and the professional actions of the responding supervisors and officers were noted and praised by area residents. These actions are in keeping with the highest traditions of public safety service and bring great credit to themselves, the evening and midnight shift teams, and the Groton Police Department. Congratulations.
I always say that as a police department, if you had to have a plane crash in your jurisdiction, you couldn't even make this up. No wires down. It rained at the end, so sightseers left. You didn't even have crowds around. It was unbelievable. Officer Michael Farnsworth, front and center. Officer Farnsworth will be receiving a letter of commendation as follows. During the period 6/29/2021 through January 14, 2022, Officer Michael Farnsworth distinguished himself during a stolen boat investigation case. The boat was recovered, but it was missing its outboard motor valued at approximately $3,000. Officer Farnsworth's perseverance in this investigation directly led to the identification and arrest of the suspect, as well as the recovery of the stolen motor. Furthermore, Officer Farnsworth's investigation assisted the Stonington Police with a similar investigation in their jurisdiction. Officer Farnsworth's excellence, thoroughness, and commitment to his investigation brings credit upon himself, the law enforcement profession, and the Groton Police Department. Congratulations, Officer Farnsworth. Officer Sean Parody, front and center. Officer Sean Parody will be receiving a letter of commendation as follows. On April 26, 2022, at approximately 11 p.m., Officer Sean Parody was dispatched to the Noank Village area for the report of two subjects breaking into a motor vehicle. The subjects ran off after being confronted by the caller. Officer Parody quickly arrived in the area and began searching for the two subjects. Officer Parody located an open vehicle door and observed two males begin to run away from the vehicle. Officer Parody drove his police vehicle towards the direction of where the suspects ran. Officer Parody then stopped his car and began chasing after the two suspects on foot. It should be noted that suspects involved in burglaries often carry burglary tools and dangerous weapons on their person to gain entry into secured areas. Furthermore, the area where this incident took place was dark and added a significant level of danger to Officer Parody as he chased after the suspects. In the process of chasing the two suspects, Officer Parody injured himself while scaling a wooden fence, as well as slipping and falling on a residential pool deck, which was extremely slippery due to the fact that it had recently rained. Hitting both his head and his back, Officer Parody maintained a calm demeanor and caught up to one suspect and was able to give him verbal commands before detaining the male. While detaining the first suspect, Officer Parody observed the second suspect attempting to flee from an elevated deck above him. Officer Parody gave the second male subject verbal commands to stop and get on his stomach, which the male did. Officer Parody then detained the second suspect in handcuffs. After gaining control of both suspects, Officer Parody checked the well-being of both suspects, offered them medical care, and radioed in his position to backup officers arriving in the area. Officer Parody's injuries ultimately required him to seek medical attention at the hospital. Throughout this incident, Officer Parody displayed professionalism, bravery, and courage while remaining calm during a highly charged and stressful incident. Officer Parody's actions are a credit to himself, the town of Groton, and the Groton Police Department. Congratulations, Officer Parody. Telecommunicator Nathan Canas, telecommunicator Catherine Moskell, telecommunicator Michael Clapsaddle, and Police Communications Officer at the time, Officer Jenna McKechnie, and telecommunicator Michael White, front and center. These personnel will be receiving a letter of commendation as follows. On November 27, 2022, at approximately 9 p.m., the most massive structure fire call in recent history took place at the Seaport Marine Building in Mystic, in the Mystic section of Stonington. This 4-alarm blaze was exacerbated by remarkably high winds, which caused the fire to move rapidly throughout the entire structure, which included a large amount of hazardous material in storage. As a result, there was the potential for the blaze to spread to nearby residences and other businesses. Groton emergency dispatch personnel on duty at the time of the initial call were telecommunicator Canas, telecommunicator Moskal, telecommunicator Clapsaddle, and Officer Jenna McKechnie. Later during the event, telecommunicator Michael White reported to the dispatch center on his own accord to assist as needed. Over the course of the next hour and throughout the fire event, the aforementioned members coordinated an overall fire, police, emergency medical service response from over 28 agencies with 39 pieces of fire and EMS apparatus responding to the scene, staging the area or covering the quarters of other departments committed at the scene. Not only did the dispatchers and police officer work exceedingly well together to manage the fire event, but they collectively continued to manage other fire, police, EMS calls as they came into the Groton Emergency Dispatch Center. As noted by telecommunicator Lee Rummel in his award recommendation write-up, they made sense out of chaos, met the immediately urgent needs of fire officers on the scene, all while conducting themselves in a professional manner. Congratulations, telecommunicators and Officer McKechnie. Sergeant Cordaway, Officer Chad Potter, Officer Ryan Brower, Detective Sergeant Heather Beauchamp, Detective Matthew Hammerstrom, and Officer Lori Sosha, front and center. These officers and detectives will be receiving a unit citation as follows. On July 27, 2019, at approximately 1:50 a.m., the Groton Emergency Dispatch Center received a 911 call regarding a motorhome on fire in the area of Crystal Lake Road, Groton. The motorhome was occupied at the time of the fire, and the sole occupant sustained minor injuries as a result of the fire. The motorhome was completely destroyed by the fire. The Groton Police Fire Investigation Unit was contacted and responded to the scene. An investigation into the cause and origin of the fire was conducted. As a result of the cause and origin investigation, the fire was determined to be incendiary in nature. A suspect was developed who ultimately confessed to fire investigators and stating he intentionally started the fire. On August 7, 2019, the suspect was arrested and charged with arson first degree and reckless endangerment first degree. The suspect is currently serving a significant jail sentence as a result of this crime. Congratulations, officers and detectives. Sergeant Joel Lenda, Sergeant Eben Van Voorhees, Officer James Rory O'Connor, Officer Sean Lissy, Officer Sean O'Brien, Officer Andrew Collins, Officer Tiffany Calkins, Officer Anthony Lucero, Officer Eric Laporte, Officer Mitchell Chapman, and telecommunicators Dave Smith and Lee Rummel, front and center. These personnel will be receiving a unit citation as follows. On January 30th, 2020, Groton police officers responded to a residence in the Mystic section of Groton in an attempt to take into custody a potentially armed and dangerous suspect who was subject to several active arrest warrants. The suspect had been making threatening and suicidal comments and was believed to be armed with a firearm. Groton officers quickly established a perimeter surrounding the residence and containing the suspect. Unaware of the officer's presence, the suspect exited the residence. Groton officers on scene recognized the window of opportunity to safely take the suspect into custody. Officers closed in on the suspect and, after a brief foot pursuit, the suspect was safely taken into custody. Their swift action ended a potentially dangerous situation in the safest manner possible and resulted in no injuries. Congratulations, officers and telecommunicators. Lieutenant Stephen McAndrew, Detective Sergeant Heather Beauchamp, Detective Richard Savino, Sergeant Eric Cordaway, Officer Kyle Lopriori, and Officer Jake Regula, front and center. These officers and detectives will be receiving a unit citation as follows. On August 15th, 2020, Groton police officers responded to the report of a residence with smoke coming out of it. Arriving officers discovered a residence that was smoking and was on fire. Officers attempted to access the home to determine if anyone was inside, but the smoke prevented them from entering the home. Neighbors advised officers the home was unoccupied, which the fire department personnel confirmed after extinguishing the blaze. Officers quickly developed a suspect based upon witness statements and observations. A canvass of the area led to the discovery of items used in the commission of the crime. The patrol officers, along with members of our Criminal Investigation Division, CID, processed the crime scene and continued to advance the investigation through forensics and witness accounts. The investigative efforts of Groton police officers and our CID members culminated in the arrest and conviction of the suspect, who is currently serving a jail sentence for this crime. Congratulations. Lieutenant Christopher Holt, Sergeant Eben Van Voorhees, Sergeant Lauren Fippinger, Sergeant Evan Grasser, Officer Tyler D'Angelo, Officer Andrew Collins, Officer Devin Bedard, Officer Ryan Brower, Officer Aaron Wing is not with us today, Detective Matthew Hammerstrom, Detective Richard Savino, and Detective Jesse Camo, front and center. These officers and detectives will be receiving a unit citation as follows. On January 23rd, On January 23rd, 2021, Groton police officers responded to a Henny Penny store within the town of Groton for the report of an armed robbery during which a firearm was displayed. While on scene, officers conducted a canine track and quickly developed a suspect description utilizing a robbery suspect checklist. It was determined the suspect was involved in a previous robbery in the town of Waterford hours before this incident. As a result of the investigation, which consisted of interviews, social media postings, local and regional database checks, and forensics analysis, officers and members of our department's Criminal Investigation Division were able to recover the firearm used in the crime and identify the suspect responsible for the crime. The suspect was interviewed and confessed to his involvement in the Henny Penny robbery, the Waterford robbery, and numerous other robberies throughout southeastern Connecticut as well. The suspect was arrested on the strength of an arrest warrant and was eventually convicted of robbery in the first degree. The suspect is currently serving a significant jail sentence for this crime. Congratulations. Officer Michael McCarthy, Officer Sean O'Brien, Officer Andrew Collins, Detective Matthew Hammerstrom, Detective Jesse Camo, and Officer Lori Sosha, front and center. These officers and detectives will be receiving a unit citation as follows. On September 5th, 2021, at approximately 2 p.m., Groton police officers responded to the Walmart for the report of a robbery. While officers were en route, the two suspects evaded officers as they fled from the scene. However, responding officers located an abandoned vehicle which the suspects had used as a second getaway vehicle. Through extensive follow-up interviews, confidential informant tips, and DNA and forensics evidence, patrol officers and members of our department's Criminal Investigation Division were able to identify the two suspects responsible for the crime. DNA hits revealed the suspects were involved in numerous other crimes throughout the state, but no other agency had been able to identify the suspects until the introduction of our DNA evidence into the database. Both suspects were eventually arrested and remain in custody awaiting trial on this case. One suspect is in the pretrial process for 11 criminal incidents. The second suspect is in the pretrial process for 23 criminal incidents. Many of these arrests were made possible by our department's collection of DNA during this investigation. Congratulations. Lieutenant Anthony LaFleur, Sergeant Joel Lenda, Sergeant Eric Cordaway, Sergeant Lauren Fippinger, Canine Officer Sean Lissy, Officer Kyle O'Priori, Officer Tiffany Calkins, Canine Officer Ryan Brower, Officer Mitchell Chapman, front and center. These officers and detectives will be receiving a Police Educational Achievement Medal as follows. Recognizing the attainment of a bachelor's degree, Sergeant Joel Lenda. Recognizing attainment of a master's degree, Lieutenant David Miner is not here with us. He's currently at the FBI National Academy. Lieutenant Anthony LaFleur, Sergeant Lauren Fippinger, Sergeant Eric Cordaway, Canine Officer Sean Lissy, Officer Kyle O'Priori, Officer Tiffany Calkins, Canine Officer Ryan Brower, and Officer Mitchell Chapman. Congratulations. Sergeant Cordaway, stay pat. Gotcha. Sergeant Cordaway will be receiving a canine commendation. Unfortunately, our canine commendation medals have not arrived yet at this time, but he will be getting a certificate, and he will get the medal immediately upon receipt. Sergeant Cordaway's narrative is as follows. On July 7th, 2020, Canine Sergeant Eric Cordaway and his canine partner Saber responded to the Super 8 motel to assist officers with a canine track of a suspect who fled on foot. The suspect had initially engaged officers in a brief motor vehicle pursuit and later rammed a police vehicle when located behind the Super 8 motel. As the suspect attempted to flee a second time, he almost struck an officer with his vehicle before crashing into the wood line and fleeing on foot. Sergeant Cordaway and Saber conducted a track for the suspect for several hundred yards throughout heavily wooded and unforgiving terrain. The suspect was located by Canine Saber and surrendered without incident upon seeing the police canine. As a result of the track, Canine Saber sustained numerous lacerations to his facial area, as well as breaking his front incisor tooth, which later required surgery to repair. Sergeant Cordaway and Canine Saber are commended for their dedication to duty for their role in tracking down and arresting the suspect before someone was injured. Their actions as a canine team brought great credit upon themselves, the canine unit, and the Groton Police Department. Congratulations, Sergeant Cordaway. Officer Tyler D'Angelo, front and center. Officer Tyler D'Angelo will be receiving a canine commendation as follows. On June 21st, 2021, Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo and his canine partner Jax were requested to assist Task Force Officer Kyle O'Priori and the U.S. Postal Service's Narcotics and Bulk Cash Trafficking Task Force with a controlled open-air search of packages at a mail processing facility. Canine Jax is dual certified in patrol work and narcotics detection. During the search, Canine Officer D'Angelo observed Jax alert on 2 packages at random. The packages were seized by task force officers and search warrants were sought. Once the search warrants were approved, task force officers searched the 2 packages and seized a total of $65,620 in suspected drug proceeds. Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo and Canine Jax are commended for their abilities to function as a canine detection team, which helped task force officers develop probable cause for search warrants leading to a significant seizure of drug proceeds. Their abilities as a canine team bring great credit upon themselves, the canine unit, and the Groton Police Department. Officer Ryan Brower, front and center. Canine Officer Ryan Brower will be receiving a canine commendation as follows. On December 11, 2021, Canine Officer Ryan Brower and his canine partner Saber were requested for mutual aid in Groton City for a canine track of a violent domestic violence suspect. The suspect was also wanted on numerous felony warrants and was believed to be armed with a firearm. Further complicating the situation, the suspect fled into a large congested housing complex with no known direction of travel. Canine Officer Brower utilized a shoe as a scent article to assist Canine Saber in locating the suspect's scent to track. Canine Saber was able to locate the suspect's odor and track through the housing complex to a wooded area at the northwest corner of the complex. Canine Saber began to display a proximity alert indicating the suspect was close by. Canine Officer Brower and Canine Saber transitioned to an on-leash search of the woodline. Canine Saber continued pulling along the woodline and towards a small embankment where Canine Officer Brower observed the suspect attempting to hide in a pile of leaves. Canine Saber began to bark as officers gave the suspect commands to surrender. The suspect was taken into custody without incident. Canine Officer Brower and Canine Saber are commended for their dedication to duty for their role in tracking down and arresting a violent suspect. Their actions as a canine team brought great credit upon themselves, the canine unit, and the Groton Police Department. Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo, Officer Chad Potter, Officer Jake Regula, Officer Sharif Afifi, Officer Evan Zavikas, Telecommunicator Nate Canas, front and center. These officers will be receiving a unit citation, and Officer D'Angelo will also be receiving a canine commendation, as follows. On November 1st, 2022, at approximately 12:40 a.m., Groton Police Officer Evan Zavikas was on patrol and observed a male at a local convenience store in Groton matching the description of a violent offender who had an active arrest warrant from this agency. This offender had a long and violent criminal history and had previously fought with police and had fled from police on multiple occasions. Officer Zavikas attempted to make contact with the offender, but the male fled on foot behind multiple commercial businesses and into a heavily wooded area. Officer Zavikas chased after the offender, giving multiple verbal commands to the suspect to stop. However, the male continued fleeing. Officer Zavikas was able to obtain the last known location for the suspect and provided it to Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo, who arrived on scene to assist. Multiple officers arrived on scene also to assist and set up a perimeter around the area. A call for mutual aid was put out to Groton City Police to assist in the perimeter. Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo retrieved his canine partner Jax and made multiple loud canine announcements prior to deploying Jax on leash into the heavily wooded area. Canine Officer D'Angelo and Jax and backup officer Chad Potter conducted a thorough track into the heavily wooded area. The track led to the location of the suspect's ball cap in one location and then his cell phone in another location. Officers were unable to locate the suspect after a long search, at which time Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo, recognizing Jax's behavior change in a particular location of the wooded area, brought Jax back to that area. Upon conducting an area search for the suspect, Jax began air scenting, indicating the suspect was nearby. At this time, Officer Potter located a very small piece of clothing sticking out from underneath thick brush, briars, and leaves. The suspect had buried himself in a hole under leaves and thick brush. Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo and Officer Potter began making multiple verbal commands for the male to show his hands and surrender. The suspect complied, and Sergeant Eric Cordaway entered the wooded area to take the suspect into custody. Congratulations. Officer Kyle Lopriori, front and center. You're going to stay up here for 2. Officer Kyle Lopriori will be awarded an Outstanding Service Medal as follows. In November of 2020, Officer Kyle Lopriori, in his assignment as a task force officer with the United States Postal Inspection Services Narcotics and Bulk Cash Trafficking Task Force, assisted in initiating an investigation into a suspicious package that was shipped from New Haven, Connecticut to an address in Puerto Rico through the U.S. Postal Service. A federal search warrant was executed and the package was opened to reveal it contained $100,000. Task Force Officer Lopriori, along with his other task force team members, continued this investigation, which ultimately yielded numerous other packages containing kilogram quantities of cocaine being shipped through the U.S. Postal Service, the resale of cocaine, and shipments of narcotic proceeds. During the course of this investigation, among other investigative measures, Officer Lopriori conducted surveillance and made controlled deliveries of packages containing cocaine. He then communicated with the U.S. Attorney's office to prepare and obtain arrest and search warrants for the persons and addresses involved. On August 10, 2021, Task Force Officer Lopriori, along with other members of the U.S. Postal Inspection Services Task Force, an organized operation. During this operation, federal arrest and search warrants were executed. Task Force Officer Lopriori assumed an instrumental role throughout these investigations and was assigned to be a team leader of one of the search locations. As a team leader, Task Force Officer Lopriori managed the operational planning of the execution and clearly and effectively communicated the goals and strategies of the operation to his team members. As a result of this investigation and operation, 2 individuals were arrested and charged by federal criminal complaint with conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute cocaine, which carries a maximum term of imprisonment of 20 years. The investigation also resulted in the seizure of 2 kilograms of cocaine, heroin, electronics, and 3 vehicles. Congratulations. Officer Kyle Lopriori will be awarded his second Outstanding Service Medal as follows. On December 27, 2021, Task Force Officer Kyle Lopriori was presented with a United States Postal Inspection Service Certificate of Appreciation. The certificate was presented by the United States Postal Inspection Service's Boston Division Inspector in Charge, Ketty Larco Ward. The certificate was presented to Task Force Officer Lopriori in regards to a case he became involved in June 1st, 2021, as part of his duties with the United States Postal Inspection Services Task Force. On that date, a Pawtucket, Rhode Island U.S. postal carrier was abducted at gunpoint while the perpetrators searched for cocaine they thought was missing from a delivered package. As part of this investigation, Officer Lopriori participated in an operation with the United States Postal Inspection Service team members, counterparts in Puerto Rico, Rhode Island State Police, and the U.S. Marshals Service. On June 8, 2021, investigators arranged for a controlled delivery of packages to the suspect. As a result, 4 individuals responsible for the kidnapping were arrested. Multiple searches were conducted of vehicles and residences, which yielded evidence which has been used and/or worn by the suspects during the commission of the June 1st crime. On November 4th, 2021, charges were brought against these 4 individuals in U.S. District Court. An additional suspect was identified and charged during this investigation for being a participant in a large-scale drug trafficking operation involving numerous packages being shipped from Puerto Rico containing kilogram quantities of cocaine. Task Force Officer Lopriori immediately responded to Rhode Island when he was contacted to assist in this investigation. Officer Lopriori served as an integral part of this investigation as a member of the United States Postal Inspection Task Force. Officer Lopriori is a committed team member and continuously exhibited motivation and dedication while conducting complex investigations such as this one. Congratulations, Officer Lopriori. Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo, front and center. Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo will be awarded an Outstanding Service Medal as follows. From November 2021 to January 2022, Canine Officer Tyler D'Angelo initiated and conducted a narcotics investigation involving a residence in the town of Groton. Officer D'Angelo spent numerous hours on duty conducting surveillance, investigative work, and doing investigative research to piece together vital aspects of this investigation. Officer Lopriori further spent many hours off duty communicating with the inspectors at court as he worked to submit a search and seizure warrant for approval for a search of the suspect's residence. As a result of Officer D'Angelo's extensive investigation, he, along with members of the Patrol Division and the Department's Criminal Investigation Division, served the search warrant at the residence, which resulted in numerous arrests and the seizure of large quantities of crack cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, and drug paraphernalia associated with the production and sales of narcotics. Officer D'Angelo conducted this investigation with little to no supervision and utilized this opportunity to instruct, mentor, and include the younger officers on the midnight patrol shift. Officer D'Angelo's investigation led to the arrest of an individual responsible for the distribution of sizable quantities of narcotics within the town of Groton as well as neighboring jurisdictions. Officer D'Angelo's knowledge, professionalism, diligence, and work ethic are a credit to himself, the town of Groton, and the Groton Police Department. Congratulations. Officer Devin Bedard, front and center. Officer Bedard will be awarded a life-saving medal as follows. On February 3rd, 2020, Officer Bedard was off duty at a fitness gym in Westerly, Rhode Island. Officer Bedard was made aware of another gym patron who had passed out and became unresponsive. Upon approaching the male victim, Officer Bedard observed another person, later identified as an off-duty Westerly police officer, beginning CPR efforts on the male. The victim had no pulse, and his face was beginning to turn purple. Officer Bedard quickly began assisting the Westerly officer with CPR efforts. An automatic external defibrillator, AED, was made available to the officers who promptly set it up and initialized it. The AED analyzed the patient's heart rhythm and directed a shock to be delivered. A shock from the AED was delivered to the patient, and CPR was continued to the point where the male regained a pulse and consciousness. The male was subsequently transported to an area hospital where he remained in stable condition. Officer Bedard's professionalism, diligence, and quick actions greatly contributed to the male's survival. Congratulations, Devin. Officer Andrew Collins, front and center. Officer Collins will be awarded a life-saving medal as follows. On July 6, 2020, Officer Andrew Collins was off duty visiting family in Vermont. While swimming at a local waterfall and swimming area, Officer Collins heard a strange sound near him. Upon investigating further, he located a woman lying upside down under the base of the waterfall. Officer Collins observed the woman to be in distress. She had blood coming from the back of her head, and she appeared to be struggling to breathe due to the water from the falls nearly drowning her. Officer Collins acted swiftly and was able to pull the woman from the base of the falls. Officer Collins' wife, a nurse for Yale New Haven Hospital, called 911, and they both began to render aid to the woman as best they could with what they had available to them. The woman had severe injuries and suffered major head trauma. After a period of time, the local rescue services arrived, and Officer Collins assisted with extricating the woman a couple hundred feet out of the woods to a waiting ambulance. The woman was assessed and transported to a medical flight helicopter to be flown to Dartmouth Hospital due to the severity of her injuries. Due to the quick actions by both Officer Collins and his wife, who is in attendance here, yes? She doesn't want to be seized. The female would have likely not have survived. Congratulations to the two of you.
Really deserves this, right?
Sergeant Evan Grasser and Officer Eric Laporte, front and center. Sergeant Evan Grasser and Officer Eric Laporte will be awarded a life-saving medal as follows. On August 20th, 2020, Officer Evan Grasser, now Sergeant, Tyler Moreau, he's an officer who used to be with us, is no longer at this department, and Officer Eric Laporte responded to a residence for the report of a person in cardiac arrest or possible suicide. Our officers responded quickly and made entry to the residence, finding the victim lying in a fetal position in the bathroom tub. The victim, as well as the tub and surrounding walls, were covered in blood. Officers worked quickly to assess the victim, check vital signs, and locate the point of the victim's injuries. The victim's vital signs were weak. A deep laceration was located on the victim's wrist. Recognizing that the victim was in critical condition, Officer Laporte quickly applied a tourniquet above the wound and effectively stopped the bleeding. Officer Moreau aided in continuing the patient assessment. Officer Grasser ran outside, provided a situational report to the sergeant, and coordinated with responding EMS and fire personnel. Understanding that any delay would severely decrease the victim's chance of survival, Officer Grasser decided not to wait for EMS personnel to prepare a stretcher or stair chair. Officer Grasser grabbed a bedsheet from EMS personnel and proceeded back upstairs to move the victim to the ambulance. The 3 officers pulled the blood-covered victim from the bathtub and placed the patient in the sheet. Using the sheet as a makeshift stretcher, the officers moved the patient down the stairs to an ambulance. Officer Moreau assisted in providing life-saving care on the ambulance as well. Officer Grasser and Officer Laporte remained calm, poised, and focused during an extremely stressful life or death situation. Officer Grasser and Officer Laporte's decisive and quick actions taken in the performance of their duties undoubtedly saved the victim's life. Their dedication to duty and commitment to the preservation of life reflect great credit upon themselves and the Groton Police Department. Congratulations. Telecommunicator David Smith, front and center. Telecommunicator David Smith will be awarded a life-saving medal as follows. On July 24th, 2022, telecommunicator David Smith took a 911 call for a male not breathing. Dispatcher Smith immediately instructed the caller to begin CPR and gave the caller step-by-step instructions on how to perform CPR. The caller continued CPR efforts based on Dispatcher Smith's instructions until the Groton City Police arrived on scene and took over CPR efforts. Fire department personnel also arrived on scene and announced the patient had a pulse and was subsequently transported to the hospital with a pulse. Given that the caller did not know how long the male had been down and in cardiac arrest, it was unclear that telecommunicator Smith's CPR instructions to the caller were key to ensuring it was clear that telecommunicator Smith's CPR instructions to the caller were key to ensuring the patient had the greatest potential to being resuscitated. If not for telecommunicator Smith's providing clear CPR instructions to the caller, in all likelihood, the outcome for the male would not have been as positive. Congratulations. Telecommunicator Catherine Moskal, front and center. Telecommunicator Catherine Moskal will be awarded a life-saving medal as follows. On November 7th, 2022, telecommunicator Catherine Moskal took a 911 call for an unresponsive female. The caller was not certain if the patient was breathing. Telecommunicator Moskal had the caller, who was very emotional, conduct a patient survey, and once it was discovered the victim was not breathing, telecommunicator Moskal instructed the caller to begin performing CPR. Telecommunicator Moskal remained calm, focused, and professional while providing step-by-step instructions to the caller on how to perform CPR. The caller, who began to calm down, continued CPR efforts based on telecommunicator Moskal's instructions until a Groton police officer and emergency medical services personnel arrived on scene to assist. As a result of telecommunicator Moskal's CPR instructions to the caller and her demeanor while attempting to calm down the caller and give CPR instructions, she provided life safety instructions which set in motion life-saving steps to save the patient's life. The patient was ultimately transported to the hospital with a pulse and was breathing on her own. Officer Michael Farnsworth, front and center. Officer Michael Farnsworth will be awarded the Meritorious Actions Medal. On September 25th, 2020, at approximately 2:15 p.m., Groton police officers were dispatched to a residence in the town of Groton for the report of a male attempting to commit suicide by using inhalants. Upon the arrival of officers, the subject accessed a utility knife and began to cut himself. The subject then cornered himself in an upstairs bedroom and threatened to kill himself if officers came any closer. Officer Farnsworth was able to begin speaking with the subject and built a rapport with the male. The subject and Officer Farnsworth were familiar with each other, and due to that connection, the subject was willing to continue speaking with Officer Farnsworth. Officer Farnsworth was able to build the trust of the subject and de-escalate the male's rage and hostility to the point where the subject was calm but still unstable. Officer Farnsworth turned his taser over to another responding officer and placed himself mere feet away from the subject to show the male he was not there to cause harm to him. Officer Farnsworth spoke with the subject for nearly 4 hours straight until the subject eventually agreed to put the knife down. Officer Farnsworth's poise and calm under pressure during an extremely prolonged and tense situation, along with his willingness to place himself in a dangerous position to help someone in need, is to be commended and is in keeping with the highest traditions of the Groton Police Department. Congratulations, Captain. Sergeant Evan Grasser, Officer Sean O'Brien, Officer Andrew Collins, Officer Michael Farnsworth, Telecommunicator Michael Gilman, Telecommunicator Amy Lipkin, and Telecommunicator Lee Rummold, front and center. Lieutenant Wolf is also a recipient of one of these awards, but he was not able to be with us today. Lieutenant Wolf, Sergeant Evan Grasser, Officer Sean O'Brien, and Officer Andrew Collins will be awarded the Medal of Bravery. Officer Mace Boudreau, who's not with us today, Officer Mike Farnsworth, Telecommunicator Michael Gilman, Telecommunicator Amy Lipkin, and Telecommunicator Lee Rummold will be receiving a letter of commendation. I would also like to note that the 4 officers receiving the Medal of Bravery were nominated by our agency for and subsequently awarded the Community Law Enforcement Award for Inspirational Bravery, which was sponsored by the Peace Island Institute of Connecticut, the Milford Police Department, and the FBI New Haven Bureau. The officers were recognized at an award ceremony back in December. The award narrative is as follows. On Saturday, April 9th, 2022, at approximately 12:15 p.m., the Town of Groton Police Department's Emergency Dispatch Center received several 911 calls regarding a pickup truck which had driven from a parking lot through the front entrance of an occupied commercial business deep into the building. The first responding officers dispatched to the scene, Officer Sean O'Brien and Officer Andrew Collins, arrived on scene quickly and were faced with a very tense and chaotic scene. The front entrance of the building was completely destroyed and thick, heavy smoke billowed from the business. The pickup truck's location within the building was not able to be determined by the officers right away due to the heavy smoke. However, under extreme risk to their own personal safety, Officer O'Brien and Officer Collins selflessly entered the building to search for the pickup truck, its operator, and any other occupants of the building they could locate. Due to the thick smoke, however, both officers were forced to exit the building without locating anyone. It was later learned all the occupants of the building who were present prior to the incident were accounted for outside and were safe. Lieutenant Wolf, William Wolf, and Sergeant Evan Grasser arrived on scene at this time. Fire personnel also quickly arrived on scene. Donned in full firefighter ensemble and self-contained breathing apparatus, several firefighters entered the building and worked on extricating the operator from the pickup truck. However, the operator of the pickup truck, who was later found to be a very large and strong male, became extremely violent and physically aggressive with the firefighters to the point where he was fighting with them. It should be noted the officers on scene had no idea whether or not there were other persons in the truck with the male operator or why the truck crashed through the front entrance of the building in the first place. A firefighter then exited the building and yelled for help from the police officers to assist the other firefighters who were being assaulted inside by the male. Without hesitation, Lieutenant Wolf, Sergeant Grasser, Officer O'Brien, and Officer Collins entered the smoke-filled building with no breathing apparatus and promptly located the firefighters and the male. Officers observed the male was still actively fighting with the firefighters to the point where he was attempting to pull off the oxygen masks from the faces of the firefighters. Risking their own personal safety, the 4 Town of Groton police officers were instrumental in assisting the firefighters with bringing the male under control, securing him in handcuffs, and removing him from the building for eventual transport to the hospital for medical treatment. It should be noted that once out of the building, the male continued to actively resist the officers' efforts by thrashing about and moving his body around, which made it extremely difficult for officers and medical personnel to secure him to the stretcher. Lieutenant Wolf, Sergeant Grasser, Officer O'Brien, and Officer Collins were all required to receive medical treatment at a local hospital for smoke inhalation and blood exposure. The 4 officers' courage, judgment, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the Town of Groton Police Department. Officer Michael Farnsworth is also to be commended as he was waiting outside the building and immediately assisted the other officers with securing the suspect on a stretcher, exposing himself to the suspect's blood as well. Also of note is the professionalism displayed by our Groton emergency dispatchers and the police desk officer, who should be recognized for their efforts. While complaints continued to pour into dispatch throughout this incident, dispatchers, along with the desk officer, Officer Mace Boudreau, were still able to research and disseminate accurate information to supervisors and officers in the field in a timely manner, allowing for a sensible decision-making by those appointed in positions of authority. Congratulations. At this time, I turn over the MC duties to Deputy Chief Paul Gately.
Captain Greg McCarthy, Sergeant Eben Van Voorhees, Detective Sergeant Heather Beauchamp, Investigator Derek Robertson, Detective Matthew Hammerstrom, and Detective Jesse Como, front and center. Captain McCarthy will be awarded the Medal of Bravery. Sergeant Van Voorhees will be awarded the Meritorious Actions Medal. And Detective Sergeant Heather Beauchamp, Investigator Robertson, Detective Hammerstrom, and Detective Como are awarded the unit citation for the following. On July 25th, 2022, at approximately 2:08 p.m., Groton Town police officers were dispatched to a suspicious person call at an apartment complex on South Road. Sergeant Van Voorhees was the first to arrive on scene and encountered a man who was armed with a large kitchen knife, experiencing a crisis, and who made comments that he wanted the police to end his life. Sergeant Van Voorhees was alone with the subject for several minutes and was able to maintain a dialogue in an attempt to keep him calm and de-escalate the situation. Sergeant Van Voorhees continually asked the subject to discard the knife and to sit down and to talk to him. At this time, a majority of the patrol force was attending to a separate urgent matter on the other side of town. However, plainclothes backup units responded to assist. The first to arrive was Operations Commander Captain Greg McCarthy. By the time Captain McCarthy arrived on scene, the subject had placed a knife into his pocket of his shorts. However, he would not comply with any of Sergeant Van Voorhees' requests. Sergeant Van Voorhees and Captain McCarthy, with the assistance of arriving officers, were able to keep the subject engaged and establish a perimeter to control his movements, as there was an additional concern for the safety of any civilians who may wander into the area. As Sergeant Van Voorhees continued to engage with and distract the suspect, Captain McCarthy was able to close the distance on the subject, grasp him around the waist area while securing both arms to his sides to prevent the male from accessing the knife from his pocket, and tackle him safely to the ground. Assisting officers were able to quickly help subdue the subject until Sergeant Van Voorhees secured him in handcuffs. The subject was subsequently sent to the hospital for examination. Captain McCarthy is commended for the courage displayed during his role in ending this incident. Although exposed to potential life-imperiling danger, his decisive action enabled him to gain control of the subject while using the least amount of force necessary in a situation that could have escalated into a tragedy. Sergeant Van Voorhees is commended for his professionalism and calm under pressure while attempting to de-escalate an extremely volatile situation. Besides Captain McCarthy and Sergeant Van Voorhees, the other officers greatly assisted with bringing the incident to a safe conclusion, and they are Detective Sergeant Beauchamp, Investigator Robertson, Detective Hammerstrom, and Detective Como. Congratulations to all of you.
Before we conclude, much like Captain McCarthy, my eyesight isn't quite as good as it was when I started working. Before we conclude today, I want to recognize some other folks. Starting in March 2020, the department had to respond to the impacts of COVID-19. And as a result, we instituted a new way of promoting and recognizing members of the department in small, individualized swearing-in ceremonies. At this time, I'd like to recognize those who were promoted or were hired as members of this agency since that time. First, those promoted by rank. I'd ask you to just stand and be recognized. Not with us this morning is Captain James B., but also Captain McCarthy, Lieutenant Christopher Holt, Lieutenant David Miner, Lieutenant Stephen McAndrew, Lieutenant Anthony LaFleur. And those promoted to sergeant were Sergeants Joel Lenda, Eben Van Voorhees, Lauren Fippinger, Eric Cordewig, Brenna Bolduc, and Evan Grasser. Congratulations to all of you in this setting on your promotions, and thank you for your hard work. We've also seen a large turnover of the rank and file, both in our sworn and civilian ranks, and I'd like to recognize those individuals as well. Officer Greg Hunter, Officer Aaron Wing, Officer Jenna McKechnie, Officer Daniel Fortunato, Officer Sharif Afifi, Officer Evan Zavikas, Officer Cody Allard, Officer Jordan Bartlett, Officer Alana Berkman, Officer Jake Romansky, Officer Matthew Monahan, Officer Stephen Bavino, Officer Noah Moxfield, Officer Christopher Brion, and Officer Thomas Walker. We also have 2 officers currently attending the Connecticut Police Academy. That's Officer Brian Albee and Officer Kyle Cipriano. Congratulations to you and welcome aboard. And we've brought on some new telecommunicators as well. Officer Michael Clapsaddle. I'm sorry, telecommunicator Michael Clapsaddle. Sorry, Mike. Stand up, please. Telecommunicator Catherine Moskal. Telecommunicator Andre Salawan. And telecommunicator Jessica Butler. And I am remiss in not recognizing another retiree, Bobette Clapsaddle, so I'm sorry for not recognizing you earlier, Bobette. And some additional civilians that have come into the department are Community Outreach Specialist Lorena Clark. You can stand up, yeah. And Lily Rivera. Lily? Yeah. So finally, I'd like to make some closing remarks and pretty outstanding efforts by those folks that received awards today. Really appreciate that. The work that you do on a daily basis is recognized and appreciated. And I know that speaking on behalf of the town manager, and I suspect our town council members, we're so proud of the work that you do on a daily basis and appreciate all you do, even when it's not recognized. So I'd like to emphasize that our department remains committed to our partnership with this community, and it continues to be collaborative with other agencies. To that end, I'm proud to announce that in the coming weeks, we'll see another formal recognition of an officer in this department who will be honored in a ceremony in Washington. I'm trying not to make too big of a deal of it today because we're not supposed to say anything about it, but I just did. So, yeah, you know, I think we, well, she's not in the room. I can see her standing out there, but more to follow on that. And finally, whether you're an officer, a family member, a public official, or friend of the department, please know you send a strong message that our officers' efforts are recognized, honored, and appreciated. I want to thank you for being here. I want to congratulate all those who received those awards today and thank them for a job well done. And once again, I appreciate you being here today and spending time with us. And we are just about right on time, so I'm going to turn it back over to Captain McCarthy so he can welcome Pastor LaDuca for our benediction. Thank you.
Before I do that, I just want to let you know there is food at the back. It did get here a little early, so midnight shift might have gotten to it, but you are welcome to whatever is left, and there's water also back there. And thanks to the Board of Ed for providing that food to us. So they're not here with us now, but the remnants of the food is. So at this time, I will bring up Pastor John Ludka to give the benediction.
All I can say is, wow. We stand among heroes and or sit, but thank you all. As a 23-year member of our community, 5 sons that we've raised here, all adults now, thank you so much for your investment. You're a family member, or you are an active patrolman or officer, chief. We do appreciate it in the community, more than you know. And we're very thankful for all of you and your investment here in our community. So thank you very much, Captain. Thank you. Father, we thank you once again just for witnessing the day in the life, in some cases, of these men and these women that we hold in high regard, to uphold our laws, to protect us, to give us the sense that we can live a life in peace. And we are thankful that you put men and women like this whether they're behind a phone, behind a desk, or they're out actively pursuing someone who has gone against our laws, or, as we've heard, someone having a mental breakdown. So common in our society. Lord, may everyone here know that there is hope. There is always hope in you. And thank you for those who come alongside of our communities and protect us and keep us safe. May you bless them, may you watch over them, and may you allow those who witness today to encourage them from time to time for just staying after it. And we'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Ludka. This concludes today's ceremony. Congratulations again to all award recipients, and again, partake in the food at the back. On behalf of the department, I want to thank you all for attending, and I invite again for you to remain and have some refreshments and just general milling about. Thank you again.